Hello. In stereo.
In stereo. Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are so excited to be here with you today. My words are going to work today.
Just slow down.
Slow down. Hey, we already have someone in here today.
Hey.
Who's here? Annie. Of course it's Annie. Everybody, it's Annie Wright. Everybody say Annie. Beautiful souls. I'm in a singing mood today.
Yes,
I forewarn you. I'm sorry.
She's been singing all morning.
It's a joyful day, y'all. Hey, so because what are we talking about today? It's day 2. We're talking about love. Okay, so love. And it is all about CL, what's up? Look at y'all. Yeah, we got all our gear on. We're big kids now, CL. We're big kids now.
I couldn't hear a thing people were saying.
What? Javi should sing. He said, Javi, do you sing?
No.
That's an affirmative no.
He's been trying to get me to.
So what I was doing before when we got on, we were talking about love. Good morning. Good morning, Monica.
Good morning, Monica.
Loud and clear. Love you too. Because we were singing, what's love got to do with it? Oh, what's love? And then I went on the whole song and he's just like, what are you doing right now? He loves it though. He acts like he doesn't. He gives me the straight face like he doesn't love it, but he loves it. Mm. I could see deep in your soul. You love it.
I do.
All right. So listen, today we're talking about day 2 of love. And the title of today's study is Love Bears All Things. So that's what we're going to dive into today. Alonza, good morning. How are you, girlfriend?
Good morning, everybody.
I know. Look at we had a party today.
I appreciate everybody tuning in this morning. I really do. I just want to welcome you guys all.
Absolutely. It makes for a party. It makes for a good discussion.
Yeah,
I love it.
yesterday was pretty good. It interacted pretty good.
It always makes for a better broadcast.
It was great.
Okay, so before we get started, I want to make sure you guys are aware of a couple things. Housekeeping. You need a button for that. Housekeeping.
Yes. That's what I said yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. You did. So, number 1, there are two links in the description above, now or below, whichever it is. And you're going to see one for StreamYard if you're in our private Facebook support group, that health and wellness group that we have. That's our health and wellness community for people fighting major health issues. And all of the resources are in there. If that's something you want to jump in on, make sure you get with me and I can give you the information for that group. But if you're watching from that group, you're going to see a StreamYard link in the description. And that's basically just for our broadcast. So if you want to be able to comment on our broadcast and have us be able to bring up your comments with your name and see who you are and respond to you, make sure you click that link so that your name connects with our broadcast today. The other link is for the YouVersion Bible app, and that's going to be the study that we're using to go alongside our discussion today. This week, it's all about love. If you click that link, it'll take you directly to the study. If you haven't downloaded the YouVersion Bible app on your mobile device, it'll prompt you to do that as well. But either way, you can click that and just follow along.
And if you're new to our broadcast, my name is Javie. This is my wife,
Jessica.
And we are with the Underdog Ninja Foundation. Here we talk about 3 things that we stand on and we believe in wholeheartedly, and that is faith, character, and action. We're here every Tuesday through Saturday morning, Pacific time, 8 a.m. Pacific time, talking about that one thing, that faith piece, that foundational piece. We talk about what God has to say about our daily lives, our daily struggles against disease in itself. I speak from the point of view of heart disease, but many of you that listen in are fighting other things, whether it's depression or other diseases like diabetes or what have you. Okay, cancer. But you know, we still have to deal with life. We still have to deal with our daily struggle. Well, how can we do that when we're overwhelmed with such something like heart disease or cancer or depression, something that is just overwhelming our lives? How do we get out of that pit and that dark place? And that's that we believe we start there, that foundational piece of our faith, start building our faith towards God, with God, creating our relationship with him and solidifying that, and really listening and hearing him and what he has to say. And so we do these devotionals a little bit different than just reading a line of scripture, and then that's it, and leave it alone, and more like a affirmation would be. We go into it. We want to have a discussion with you. We give our opinion and what we feel about it through our journey, but then we invite you to have that discussion back and forth.
Yeah.
And what the hope is that we all learn from each other, and we gain knowledge, we gain some insight of what really God is saying to all of us as a community. Yeah. Right?
CL says your mic's low.
Oh, my mic's low. Okay, thank you, thank you, CL.
So, with that said, are you ready to jump in?
Yeah,
you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready. Okay, so today we're talking about love bears all things. So loving people, I'm going to turn this here. Loving people is one of the toughest things you can do. Many times it goes against all natural reasoning and understanding. This is the way God loves us. If we were honest with ourselves about some of the things we have done, we would have given up on ourselves a long time ago. Many times in relationships with other people, we give up the first time we get offended. If you do this, you will not have any sort of relationship with others because we all make mistakes. Some of the relationships that are the closest are the ones in which you must bear the most. This is especially true in marriage. Marriage is where you need to bear it all. The enemy fights marriages relentlessly because he knows the power behind them. Love does whatever it needs to do to show God's love to other people. This does not apply to cases where abuse is present. No father is okay with their child going home to get abused. If this is you, you need to make a change now. Just as a caveat, obviously, this does not apply to abusive relationships or trauma or toxicity, okay? You've been hurt, but you have hurt others too. I think all of you have heard the statement, I shouldn't have to deal with this. You have either heard it or said it or both. Anytime we have been wronged, you are absolutely correct. You should not. However, sometimes we forget that we have wronged others too. Just because you have been wronged by someone doesn't mean you have a pass on walking in love with them. What would have happened if someone stopped talking to you every time you offended someone? Nobody would be talking to you because at some point we have offended all of them. Love remembers, love remembers that others have put up with my mistakes, and I need to extend grace to other people. So our confession today should be, today I walk in love. I will bear whatever situation may come my way. I will walk in the God kind of love that extends grace whenever I have been hurt. This doesn't mean I am weak. I will make adjustments when necessary, but I will always walk in love with other people. So 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. So I love this. It's like, hey, you've wronged people before. So, make sure you remember that when you're worried about people offending. Look, I've wronged people before.
Yeah.
I've wronged people in ways that are not small. And I've had to live through those huge parts of my life. So that's something that God doesn't remind me of, but God definitely reminds me of the grace that was given to me, and the forgiveness and the love that was given to me, extended to me by not only him, but others. And so I need to be doing that same thing.
Right. So,
Good morning, Vivian. What's up?
I've talked about this before, I guess privately between you and I, what I've observed from people in broken relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. And people that have been wronged in a relationship. And it seems that they continue to be wronged. But the thing is that they go in, they take the baggage from the relationship, from this broken relationship. Okay. And then they bring it on into the next relationship.
Sure.
Or they have an idea of, they presume someone else's reactions based on someone else's previous reaction. Yeah. They have nothing to do with. Okay. Or prejudging somebody just because they are a certain gender, because they were wronged by that gender.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we are allowing that baggage, that hurt, that pain, to be completely open and loving to one another, with eyes wide open, right? With a clean slate. just like God treats us.
Right.
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 But at the same time, because I've kind of observed certain people that, they're like, well, I'm, I'm going to be single my whole life, or, they've been single for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you dig down into that, or not even have to dig down, it's very surface. They're very jaded.
Yeah, they're either jaded or they have a false belief, like we call them limiting beliefs, but it's a false belief that you've projected on yourself, that basically God feels a certain way about what your life is supposed to look like, or that God feels that you should feel a certain way.
Right.
And it's just, all foolishness.
but the thing is so a while back ago, actually doing this show, God convicted me on that very thing, because I saw people like that, and I observed, people like that. And even though that's a problem with them, that's a like a romantic relationship,
Right.
or whatever. But I've been wronged in many different ways.
Yeah.
And God showed me that I'm allowing it to affect me. So, for example, I
Right.
shared with you guys on these discussions that I lost a lot of friends through my heart journey.
Right.
And
a lot of people do. Actually, it's very common.
But I lost a lot of close friends, the people I thought were close to me. And I've allowed that to seep into my heart and jaded me from friendships. So it's been very difficult for me, really going back to my childhood, but that just added to it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that too. When we're talking about love and heart disease, and really any, like I said, I've continued to say, is we're talking about heart disease, but any major health battle where you're really sort of dealing with a lot of chaos and instability and mortality and things like that. We have baggage that we bring into that situation. So whether you're a friend of someone, or it's your friends, like you're battling heart disease, or it's a marriage situation, whatever the situation, the relationship is, remember, people go through trauma and then bring their old baggage into the trauma too, not just the relationship. So that's one of the things is that this talks about this study talks about how you've wronged people and all that stuff. But also remember, when you're talking to someone who's going through this, we talked about this yesterday, their reaction may or may not be what you expect, but not only because maybe you haven't seen them in this type of situation before, but also because you don't know what's coming to the surface. When we have to deal with such traumatic things, and it's like all of our stuff just like raises to the surface, and it kind of boils all of the, how you boil stuff and it kind of boils all the trash to the top.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So basically that's happening. And sorry, my computer did something weird. It's happening, and you're not sure if that's what's happening or why it's happening. So you have to be really loving and patient and kind, because you don't know really what's causing the reaction. You don't know what they're going through. They could be going through something they're embarrassed about and not wanting to talk about, or not even understand how to deal with it, or not even realize they're going through it, because this old stuff is coming up. It's all happening at once. And they're like, I don't know what's happening. And so, you're supposed to be patient and loving and kind with that, while we also talked about them being patient with others, because none of us know what we're doing. Right? But you see what I'm saying? Like, you bring this baggage into a traumatic situation. Like, it all comes to the surface. So your friends were all of a sudden leaving and kind of ditching you after you were dealing with this, major heart issue. Mm-hmm. But that's not the first time. So when you were like, coming up, it
created a familiar pattern.
Yes. Okay. So familiarity, right?
Right.
Trauma, by the way, anytime, like, let's say someone has a heart attack, but they were abused as a child, or they went through something traumatic as a child, or they went through a traumatic health issue as a child, whatever it is. They've gone through these feelings before that are somewhat familiar of trauma. And then all of a sudden something happens. And then whatever happened around that first trauma, or whatever things happened in your brain, could surface again too. So these are very, unique to the situation, unique to the individual type things. However, we don't really know if that's going on. So when we start to throw judgment, cast judgment on whether a person should be acting a certain way, or reacting a certain way, or handling a situation a certain way, we all start miscommunicating and not being patient and not asking questions and not showing love.
Right. The thing is what I was what I was driving towards is we talk often about how when we are going through this, when we're going through this overwhelming adversity in our lives, we tend to, well, we lose friendships a lot of the times, but then we start pushing people away. We start self-preserving. We talked yesterday about flight or fight. Excuse me. That response that we innately do as humans. And so we start protecting ourselves. And what I noticed in myself is that even though I felt isolated at a certain point in my journey and felt alone, and I had felt I've come a long way in trying to not isolate myself and be more open and talk about my story and talk about my journey and helping other people. I still there was still a side of me that was closing off to people, to friendships, to close relationships, and it's really based off of that past experience. So in this journey, this season of my journey, I have been really doing my best to kind of work towards that. And not look, I try not to hold any bitterness against anyone, and not hold anything against anybody. But being loving is also being loving to yourself, right? Also being open to other possibilities. Being loving is not trying to, how could I say, hold your, well, let me back up a second. What I believe my problem was is that I blamed myself for those broken relationships. I blame myself for not being a good friend. I've said that to actually several times to people, that I'm really not a good friend. It's not that I'm mean to people.
He's actually a great friend. It's so funny you says that.
But I don't feel, I feel like I was to blame to a lot of those things and for those broken relationships. So I don't feel that I'm a good friend, that I'm worthy, that I have the qualities that it takes to be a friend.
Well, what's so interesting about that is all that probably, well, I imagine just knowing you that those old friendships and things fell away when you blamed yourself strictly because, not because you weren't a good friend, but because in that moment you got protective over yourself because of old tapes, old traumatic experiences that you brought into that situation. And then when they started to not be sure how to deal with you and your situation, you were like, you know what, don't worry about it, and whatever, because you're already protecting yourself.
Well, I stopped communicating with people.
Right, because you were like, well, they're not going to understand it. It's total lack of communication. Exactly.
Right. But through our marriage, and I think our marriage really has been that example to other relationships. Being that our marriage is open, we have this meaning we have open communication, and that we're best friends.
Yeah.
If I could be open and honest and
vulnerable
and feel worthy to be your husband and friend, that I've been your friend for many years, longer than we've been married, then I am worthy enough to be someone else's friend. And that's something I had to really struggle with, and that I'm, to be honest, I still do. But when we going back to what we're talking about today, about really our marriage relationships and our real close relationships, when we don't love ourselves, or we don't feel that we are worthy of love, we often project that to people, and sometimes it comes out as bitterness or anger, or just being closed off to people.
Yeah,
we isolate ourselves because we don't really like what we see in the mirror. And man, that has really been coming up lately, right?
Yeah.
We've been talking about that man or woman in the mirror, who you see yourself as being. And what are you telling yourself? What do you see yourself doing? You know, there was a point in my life
Mhm.
that I didn't like who I saw. But I got over that.
Yeah.
I changed, but how there are certain aspects that I still don't like what I see.
Sure. And I think we all deal with that. But I think we definitely project anything we feel about ourselves. The way that we love ourselves is what we project into our friendships and our relationships and our marriage, things like that. But when what you're talking about is, we need to first love ourselves. And the way we love ourselves is to love ourselves the way God loves us. We need to have a relationship with God in a way that we understand how he sees us and that our identity is not self-dictated.
Mhm.
Our identity is not something we decide. Our identity is what it is. And our identity lies in Christ. That's it. So we have to begin to see ourselves as a child of God and loved and lovable and worthy and all of that of what God is telling us he's given us already, not going to give us, has already given us. We already live in victory. He's already done the job. Okay. So when we see ourselves that way, we can then place ourselves in relationships that way. I want to bring up some comments. Hey, Annie says the old you had different reactions now, which throws the people in your life. Yeah, exactly. It's a new world for everybody in your life. And those that love you enough will be willing to walk through this journey with you, or they will decide to hide or run away without understanding. That's exactly right. That happens to most people with something like heart disease and something that's a major health issue. We also need to understand as a survivor that is their journey. That's the other thing too.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say is, when we're talking about this whole thing where I said, this person's dealing with heart disease and the trauma comes up and it's like, oh, what is this reaction? Well, also, let's say this didn't happen to me personally, but let's say as an example, I had a loss, like somebody died in my family or I don't know, whatever, something. I had a loss as a young person or something. And I remember this trauma. I may have a terrible reaction to like him having a heart attack or having a near-death experience because I'm bringing up old scars and old trauma from that feeling of losing someone. And all of a sudden I like lose my mind, right? I've seen that happen. People talk about, well, she just like, or he even couldn't deal because it was too scary. And then, just couldn't have like a real, patient reaction to anything. And all of a sudden was just couldn't deal with our life at all after that.
Right.
Couldn't deal with our life at all. Now, I understand in the moment, we all kind of freak out in the moment. But I mean, after that, when people are living together afterwards and stuff, and it's too much. They can't deal with the fear of losing them. They can't, it's too traumatic.
So and they start distancing themselves.
And they never get help. And it's all based on their trauma from losing someone before. And nobody ever brings it up. They don't even realize that's what it is. And it could possibly be that as just an example. So we all bring this baggage into it, right? And so that's a perfect example. This is very real. Being by yourself is also healing if you choose to find the friend within. Yes, this has been an eye opener. Yeah, you said yesterday, Alonza, that mirror work is phenomenal. I love that. Where you're just, it seems so weird that people don't want to be with themselves. They're like, I don't know, like you said, I don't know if I like me. Like, if I don't want to be with me, why does anyone else want to be with me?
Yeah.
But get with God and have him show you the beauty within you. Have him show you what he loves so much about you. Have him show you, reveal to you the things that in you that are love, the things in you that were, everything about you was designed by him, right? So have him show you that, reveal to you what it is about you that he designed you to be that's so beautiful and wonderful, right? And that's the things that you need to cling to. Look, we're all going to have sin. We're all going to have, scars, and we're all going to have trauma. We're all going to have baggage and things that the enemy wants to pick on and things like that. But those are the things we focus on. Those are our broken pieces, and that's fine. That's what makes us probably more usable by God than anything. I think it keeps us, humble, and it keeps us in a place where we don't focus on ourselves being the ones that save the day. It's God. God saves the day, right? So God's the one that does the work. It's his glory, not ours. And I think it's okay that we aren't perfect and that we don't have it all going on. Okay. But we need to not focus on that though. We need to focus on what is working, what we like about ourselves, I'm not even talking about self-esteem. I'm talking about our value and worth in Christ. What is lovable? What is love in us, right? We can't share that if we don't have anything to share. We have to get that from God and have that fill us up first.
Absolutely.
And so that we can then love others. The only way to love someone, truly, the right way, genuinely, deeply, and purely, is with God's love. We don't possess that love within us without God. Apart from God, we cannot muster that type of love. It doesn't exist without God. So when we bring God into the picture for ourselves, we can then show that love to others. You know what I mean? So that's something that I wanted to bring up. Annie says, patience, kindness, and love and forgiveness is what we need to give ourselves and those around us. Yep, exactly. Yep. Monica agrees with you, Annie. But I think that's a really interesting point, because yesterday we brought that up at the very end of our discussion, was that what about loving ourselves? So I'm glad that came, you brought that back up today, because I think that really, in lack of communication in any relationship, when we're talking about marriage, when we're talking about friendships, even with children, any relationship, our love for ourselves and our love that we interact with God on, our level of love, is really the measure of how we're able to be in relationships. We are struggling sometimes with ourselves. And so this lack of communication that happens is all of us struggling in that way, because we can't come together, right, in a successful, healthy arrangement when it comes to our emotions. Arrangement meaning our emotions are arranged together, right? When we don't have them arranged to begin with. We don't have it in order. And so when that happens, this clash happens, and we're like, we don't have any idea what's happening. Like, all this miscommunication happens.
Well, one of the things I would like to go back to that you had mentioned about taking that past trauma, and it could happen. Look, it could happen when you were a kid, and now you're seeing something in your life that is similar, and so you immediately start projecting and making a judgment call out of protection, right, for yourself or whomever.
For someone else.
Look, there have been stories that we've heard, and people have gone through this and talked to us about this, where they've experienced death of a close family member at a young age.
Yep.
Right? And I think in maybe some ways I was like this too, early on, because heart disease is very prominent in my family. And so you see it, that you start having to, at a very young age, experience death of close family members, and very suddenly. So when you are diagnosed with that same disease, or you start seeing the same patterns, you start predicting the future. You start acting like, well, that's what my fate is going to be, rather than letting God be your guide, rather than God being the judge. God sets your expiration date. You don't.
Right.
Okay. Your family doesn't.
Your doctor doesn't.
Right. They don't set that. You may be on similar patterns, but God's the final judge. And that's why we talk about living our life beyond our disease, beyond our circumstances, moving forward and finding a way to live a full and happy life, because we don't make that decision whether today's the day.
Right.
God does. And so if today's not the day, then I should be living my life to the fullest. Look,
we got work to do.
Right. So my father, he passed away at age 48.
When you were 16?
Yeah. And then his brother a few years later at the same age. Pretty young.
Yeah.
And so and you know this, for many years, well, for most of my life, I from being 16 years old, I thought, well, I'm not going to live to be that age. That I had in my mind,
Yeah.
deep in my mind, that 48 years old is my expiration date.
Yeah. I mean, when he reached his 49th birthday, I mean, and 50th birthday, like he looked at me and was like, and I knew what he was looking at me. And I just said, see, God decides.
Yeah.
God decides. You don't get to decide just because something happened to somebody else. You know, you are very different people. You are very different lifestyles.
Right. So I'm 53 years old, and God determines my expiration date,
Right.
and I'm going to live my life the best way I can.
Yep. He's going to be 100. I have a pact with God.
And because you say so.
Wait, where's that? This is what you're living to 100. See, that's what happens when I do it. That's the sound I hear.
That's like your favorite.
I know it is. It's true. So this whole thing about love bears all things is what we're talking about today. So patience, right? Bearing the burdens of a relationship, bearing the trials, things that you go through together, right? Bearing the things you have to go through with your children. Hello, can I get an amen?
Oh yeah.
Okay. From birth to forever, till ever, whatever age. Let me bring this up. I know that feeling. I've done that in the last 20 years relationships because of a promise and desperateness. I need God. Yes, I agree. I think that I've done and pushed people away. Yeah, in relationships, many because of abusive relationships or allowing friends to get too close because of the fear of myself or losing them. Fear of myself. I say choosing people in my life. Yeah. It's just all of this fear that we have that we just make decisions based on. Genes are only 10% of our health. The rest is absolutely, Vivian.
Yes.
You are 1,000% right. Absolutely right. Thank you for chiming in. No, I love that. No, it's absolutely right because that's another thing is that when somebody's dealing with heart disease or similar things, judgments are made on both sides because of that. You had a lot of family members and relationships that had projected things on you based on family, like, well, this is it for you, buddy.
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not love. That's not patience and kindness. And there's no communication there. There's no asking questions. There's no, well, hey, what are you going to do? Like, what do you think? They didn't even ask what he thought. It was like, You're going to die. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
And even though they were very loving and meant it in a very loving way that you're going to die. I don't know how that's done.
How do you translate that?
But the thing is that's their perspective and that's their viewpoint, and so they're putting that on to you.
Right. Well, and I think communication. To be honest, really, what we're talking about here is communication. We're always talking about communication. I don't care. Pick a subject. We're talking about it because, especially with love, because here's the thing: is in that case, when people were projecting stuff on you, in the case when we're dealing with trauma, in the case when we're dealing with children, in the case when we're dealing with somebody going through something very hard and we don't understand what they're going through, they don't understand that we're going through this, all of those things, it's people just being bad at communication. Mostly. I think it's you feel whatever you feel, but communicating that's another issue. Right? You're going through something traumatic, or I'm going through something traumatic with you, or whatever it is, or our kids are going through something traumatic. The communication is the key to everything.
Right.
Because we could love all day long, but if we're not communicating that love appropriately, who cares? And the other thing too, because it's worthless. I mean, it doesn't do anything unless you're communicating it, and communicating it not just with words, by the way, but with actions. Loving isn't always an emotion or a noun; it's a verb.
Right.
When you are loving someone, it's mostly a verb. Yeah, when you're loving someone, you are actually loving them. You are showing them love. You are doing things that create that loving relationship. You are showing them that you love them. You are doing acts of service. I know that we all have our different love languages or whatever, but you're showing love in action. Sacrificing for someone, being patient with them, making what's that word? Not considerations, but making space for them. I can't think of the word suddenly, but anyway, you're putting your things aside for them. taking into consideration, things for them, right? I can't think of it now, but it's just something that we're doing. And when you're not showing love and then not communicating it well through your actions and through your words, it is a lot through your words too, is that the understanding is communicated through words, connecting. Yeah. But that's a good one too, Alonso, but it was the word, it's the, I can't think
Don't get stuck on it.
I can't think of it. I get stuck on words. I'm like, oh, I want to communicate that. See, I'm a communication like junkie. And so that's why I get so hot on this topic, because I'll be watching a movie and be like, God, if they would just tell each other that, the whole movie would be like, why would we even have the movie?
It's a movie be like 5 minutes.
I know, it's true. Like most movies are built on lack of communication. Let's be honest. Like situations people get themselves into. This is all
well, wars are fought and thousands of people die
based on lack of communication.
Right.
So think about that. You think your household's on fire? Wars are fought because of lack of communication. So you're not alone. It's just us humans trying to figure out, how to communicate. And when we don't, especially when it's traumatic, like there's something major going on and we're trying to read the person. Here's the other thing. You're used to reacting and interacting and like responding to the person that you're married to based on reading from them. And when you're getting like a totally different signal, you're like, well, I'm just going to stay over here and see what happens. Like, I don't know. I don't want to light the fire. I don't want to I don't know what's happening. I'm just going to wait and see what's going on. And then, there's a lot of kind of adjusting, and we just have to be very patient and kind with ourselves too in that process. But that's that love bearing all things, remembering that we've hurt people. We're all broken. We've all done it. We've all gotten grace and mercy from God.
Yes.
And so we need to show that grace and mercy for others.
But again, going back to ourselves, because of our own transgressions, because of our own sin and the things that we've done wrong, and maybe we've confessed those sins, we've brought those to God, but there's a side of us that we don't truly believe that we've been forgiven. It's either we have or we haven't. Okay. And if we've been forgiven, if God has shown us mercy, then we should live that way. We should be acting that way.
Well, one time, I remember I went through something in my life, and I was just hurting everybody. I mean, I was destroying my life. It's part of my 20s. It was my 20s, which I call my dumpster fire years. And I was just living a rebellious life. And I remember talking to one of my best friends and saying, like, oh, I don't think God can forgive me for all of this. And she said, unless you let him forgive you, you're basically saying that Jesus died for nothing. No, thank you, Jesus. And I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't live with that. I was like, hold on. I firmly believe that Jesus died for my sins. She was like, well, then you just said it. And the Bible's very clear that it's all sins.
Absolutely.
It's no matter what you do. And I really had to suck that up and be like, you know what? God's bigger than this. It doesn't really matter what I did. God is willing and has already forgiven me for that. And to not project that onto my relationships in the future. And I had to, there's no way. Let me just be clear. There is no way that I could have had a successful relationship with this man unless I had been willing to accept God's forgiveness for my past, for the baggage I did not need to be carrying into this relationship.
Right.
Because I would never have allowed him to love me the way that he does, because I wouldn't have loved myself. Right. I wouldn't have allowed God to love me the way that God loves me. Right. So this is the things. Love is really powerful. Love does heal all things. Love. Right. But we have to allow it.
Yeah. And meaning that again, it's an action word. So we have to allow that action to take place in our lives.
Yeah. It is an intentional thing.
We have to love ourselves, not just in words, but in action. In action.
We have to give ourselves space to be human. We have to give ourselves space and literally space, like in time in the morning. Like for instance, in the morning, I give myself space to read God's word and connect with him a little bit on just what he has to say. Could just be learning some history. Could be him telling me something. Could be prayer. But just giving myself space to have some time with God, to just be like, hey, it's you and me. I call him dude. Hey, dude. However you talk to God is fine. But the idea,
Sorry.
you muted me.
I know, I did.
You have too much power.
Yeah. I didn't want to coffee.
It's okay. You have to give yourself that space to just be yourself with God and have him take you through it, the journey through it. And then you can allow that space for others because then it's been done for you. Did you have something else?
I do, but go ahead.
Okay, I want to bring up a couple comments. Be transparent with yourself and those around you, and that will make communication easier. Oh yeah, being honest with yourself for sure. If you're not honest with yourself, how can you forgive yourself or others? And forgiveness is strength and a superpower. Well, yeah, and we had a whole conversation about forgiveness the other day, but yeah, 1,000%. Forgiveness is a superpower that's been given to us by God, and through God.
Right. When we start talking about taking that action, loving ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be it's hard at first, especially if you've been really hurt.
Well, we also think we're being I love me. It's not, you're not being a narcissist.
No. But once you, again, we talk about often allowing these negative emotions, these negative personas that we put on ourselves to be symbiotic with us. It's attached to us. It's hard to separate ourselves from that because we've now over time have identified ourselves with this negative persona.
Well, the enemy wants to help us to create false identities instead of our identity being in Christ.
But when we don't practice love in action, okay, we don't put that into action. We don't practice it one step at a time, 1% better every day, right? When we don't do that, when someone comes into our life, okay, the enemy says these horrible things in our mind, or like I said, we live in an evil world. And when someone comes into our life, and maybe even from our past, tries to remind us of who we used to be, when we don't practice in action love, we aren't equipping ourselves. We aren't strengthening ourselves. So when that does happen, because it will happen, whether it's the thoughts that land in our mind, or we run across someone in our life that wants to project something negative or evil into our lives, we can't stand strong against that. We fall weak. Well, imagine we fall right into their trap, and then we find ourselves spinning back into that state of depression.
Yeah. Well, I was just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say that imagine what you're saying in like a metaphor. So let's say you get into a relationship, and there's a lot of things that this person is going to require you to do. Like the relationship's going to require you to do. Let's say, as an example, physical fitness, right? Let's say that this is going to sound really weird, but just as an example of what you're saying, this relationship, all of a sudden, you have a lot of physical stuff you've got to do. Like there's a lot of sports that you're needing to play. You need to, you're going to need, this person's a runner, so you're going to need to run with them. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to need to be lifting a lot of things. Like maybe, I don't know, he owns a moving company. I have no idea. Anyway, the point is you have to be physically fit for this, right? Yeah. But you didn't do anything out before this, right? So now you're not equipped for this relationship. You're not equipped for this situation. You can't just go get into this marriage and not be equipped for it. Like you have to be, you can't just never practice love and then think that you're going to get into a relationship with someone intimately and then be, the most intimate relationship you're going to be in for the rest of your life and not be equipped for that. God's trying to equip you to be a loving person, just first with yourself, so that you can be equipped to love others the right way, the pure way, the genuine way, right? The true love way that God loves us. And so that it really all starts with God. So when it talks about love bearing all things, God begins that. He starts that motion. And then it goes to us, which then goes to others. And that's how God works. But when we skip the step where we're doing that for ourselves, right? Now we're loving out of a tainted bucket. we're like, well, I love you with all my baggage. Like, I love you, but it's like, kind of twisted. Or I love you, those ladies.
Well, it's not just it's not just ladies, it's guys too. Because
Yeah.
look, what did you just say a little while ago? Was we say, well, that's how we are.
That's just who I am.
That's just who I am. That's how I grew up.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And we throw that out there as a shield, as a protection. That, well,
it's a cop out.
I'm only willing to love you or to go so far in this relationship.
I'm not willing to explore the fact that I could really love you truly,
right.
and genuinely and purely and compassionately.
And then, what is it? You have to accept what I've been through. You don't know what I've been through.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we give that trauma power.
But are you healing?
Yeah. No, that's great. I think we should dive in. This is another thing we kind of a segue for tomorrow. I think we should dive into the excuses we make why we can't love.
That's a good.
I think today we dove into the loving yourself bit that we ended on yesterday, but today I think we're going to end on that. I think tomorrow we should dive into what excuses do you make why you can't love the way that you should.
Yeah. One thing, guys, I want to just take a pause here on what we're talking about. We're going to end here soon, but I'm noticing our signal dropping out. Let me know, those of you that are still tuning in, because I noticed all of a sudden we drop people and we're maybe losing signal. Are you guys hearing me okay? Hearing us okay? Are we on your end? Are we
losing signal?
Losing signal, because I don't know what's going on. We should have a strong
but internet,
strong connection.
The interwebs are finicky.
Anyway, just kind of a side note, because I'd like to know, because we do need to address that moving forward.
She says, I hear you. Okay. Thanks, Annie. All right. So anyway, I want to end with that, though. I want to end with, what excuses are we making why we can't love the way that we should be loving? Because I think that's a really serious question we could all ask ourselves in every situation, not just with heart disease, not just with trauma, but really every day. I mean, come on, we could all ask ourselves this. And, especially for me, with parenting, am I being as patient as I could be? Am I loving my kids today the way that I should be, or the way I could be? Am I making excuses? I'm too tired. I'm sick. I'm whatever. You aren't listening to me, so I can't love you the way I should right now. I mean, oh my gosh, let's talk about it. And so tomorrow I want to talk about, in all of our different relationships, what excuses are we making? Is it heart disease? I'm going through a lot. I can't be like that. I can't love you. Okay, let's talk about it. I think that's a really good discussion to start with tomorrow.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. Why don't we? Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit more, because I think that's a whole different.
It's a whole bag. It's a whole nother bag. Exactly. All right. Well, you guys, this has been amazing today. I'm loving this week already.
Right. So I really hope you guys got something out today. I love this so far, has been great. And if you guys have, please hit like and share this. Share this with your friends and your neighbors, your coworkers. Mm-hmm. Because we all need to learn how to love better and to act upon it. Why do I know that with such confidence? I mean, turn on your television, turn on the news. Mm-hmm. Really, we all need more love. The world really does need more love. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say this one last thing, okay? And it's kind of off of what this is saying, but we all have to. It seems to be at the forefront of our culture nowadays. And I've often said this, racism is not love. Racism is a very evil thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. But what I learned a long time ago, because someone that is racist acts evil upon me, I have to make a decision whether I'm going to feed into it. Am I going to project it? Am I going to continue that cancer by acting out on that, acting out of love? Look, it's very painful and very, very, it maybe even make you bitter or angry. But it doesn't mean that we can't act in love moving forward. You need to pray for those people or that individual or that circumstance. But you can't take on that onto yourself and feed into it. It is a very evil thing, but we can't allow it. Why does it continue?
Mm-hmm.
That's because it is a contracted disease
Mm-hmm.
that we have control over. Okay, we have the ability whether we're going to feed that or we're going to kill it.
Right.
And oftentimes, because it hurts so much and it happens so often, we no longer, we stop loving people.
Well, and
We
I
stop
think,
seeing people as they are children of God.
yeah, I was going to say that's what you bring up is definitely, like you said, is the forefront of our culture when it comes to love. But this applies to everything. We propagate things. We facilitate the continuance of it, and whatever that is, racism or whatever.
And I know, again, I don't know why I mentioned that. I just felt led that because this is what we all talk
It's
about.
an excuse. It's a cop out. It's an excuse to say you can't love someone based on something irrelevant.
Right.
And
there are some individuals that simply can't love someone because of the color of their skin. No matter what color their skin is, they can't seem to love someone, or they make excuses of why they can't even be friends with someone of another color. At this day and age, you know, all that we've been through, why are we still saying this?
Well, because what we said earlier,
right.
The number one reason is because of our own baggage.
Yep.
And so our own, what we're going to talk about tomorrow is our own baggage and why we use these lame and irrelevant and unrelated excuses to excuse ourselves, we think, from being able to love the way God is calling us to. And so therefore we're being disobedient in that, and saying that it's the other person is the reason why we can't love. And it's always the reason why you can't love, okay, is always you. Even in abusive situations, it doesn't mean you have to stay. But propagating that and projecting that onto someone else and continuing that isn't an option, right? We don't do that. We continue in love.
I want you to say, I want everyone to think about what Jesus actually did on the cross. What he did in action while on the cross. And everything leading up to that. How he was treated. How people treated him. What people called him. How they beat him. They beat him and whipped him.
Almost to death.
And spat in his face. Said horrible things. All this stuff. Nailed him to a cross to die. Yet he still spoke in love to his Father for you.
He didn't let all of that change what he was doing there.
A human being did that. So if we believe in him and we follow him and we're living our life as him being our example. We're trying to live our life as Christ lived his. How can believers allow racism to live in our own hearts? Right? In our own being.
You can't. Yeah.
And you know, it really, if we were really living, all of us Christians living in love and not allowing hate to live in our heart, think about what we could do in this world today.
Oh, yeah. Right? Everything.
So this goes, what we're going to talk about tomorrow, it goes beyond just our marriage or our world relationships, our circle of relationships. It affects everything around us. Anyway.
No, I think yeah, you're right. It feels a little off topic. However, I do want to point out that when we bring this up tomorrow, when we're talking about, that's another excuse we use to get in the way of love. And I think that's probably why it came up for you, because it's another thing. And the world needs a lot of love right now based on something like that. that gets in the way. And these are all because even the big excuses well, what about the big stuff? What we can't love because of this? Well, there's nothing that when I said even abusive relationships, I just mean there's nothing that should change our hearts so much that we aren't capable of love. I don't mean loving the person abusing us. I'm talking about us being loving, being a person who can love, right? Love the right way, love through God's love. So there's always room for that. So
Okay.
that's not an excuse.
Yeah. So we're going to go to our second closing. So, anyway.
That's like second breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. So again, share this with someone that you know and love. Please hit like and share this. And I really hope that you got something out of today.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes God just drops something for you to say, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you're watching from our YouTube channel, just a reminder, if you're watching from there, or if you're not, make sure you hit subscribe so that you can follow us on YouTube. Our nonprofit has this broadcast and our YouTube channel to make sure that you're getting these discussions every week. And we want to make sure that you're getting notified. So if you want to get notified, make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We greatly appreciate your support there.
All right, guys, have a wonderful day, and we will see you later.
We'll see you next time.